if you were to look at the statistics, if you were to look at the numbers, you would think, wow, the Empire really should have beat the Rebels. I mean, when you just look at the numbers, the Empire had the Rebels beat in every way. They had better training facilities, so they could have had those better admirals and generals. They had more soldiers, they had better soldiers. They even had the support of the people, or at least at the beginning they did. But the Empire lost to the rebellion. And while that may seem a little strange when you just look at the overall numbers and statistics, when you look into it really, it seems obvious that the rebels would win. I've been exploring this topic a little bit in my most recent videos. Like, the Empire generally had worse officers overall. They had a few good ones, but most of them were bad. So they would end up losing some small skirmishes that would end up impacting the entire war in ginormous ways. But yeah, that's something that I've been doing on this channel lately, and I wanted to get into another reason why the Empire lost to the rebellion, or at least possibly. And hopefully you'll be able to make your own theories about this after watching today's episode of Star Wars Nerds and Geeks. So I want to talk about the first two battles. Well, they're the only two, but the two Death Star battles, both the Battle of Yavin and the Battle of Endor. So first, the Battle of Yavin. For whatever reason, the Empire held back most of their TIE fighters. They had a Death Star full of TIE fighters, thousands upon thousands of TIE fighters in there, and yet they only launched, I don't even know, probably less than 100 fighters at the rebellion, because they were really cocky and they thought that they could win, so they didn't need to launch them all, or at least that's the explanation I've heard. Then that Death Star got destroyed here. Later, in the Battle of Endor, again, the Empire should have been able to win this. It was a little bit tougher of a fight because the rebellion launched all their ships, but it was a straight up fight, and the Empire excels at that. But they had many flaws during that. They left a giant hole in the Death Star, which was not a smart idea in the slightest. That giant hole right there, any ship could go through, and they barely even had fighters defending that. In episode 6, when the Millennium Falcon goes in and tries to blow up the reactor core, I'm pretty sure there were only like 3 TIE fighters following them. I mean, come on, it's your most valuable thing. The Death Star is so valuable. It took so much resources and money to make it. You need to put more effort to defending it. And then the Star Destroyers and the Super Star Destroyer at that battlefield were all both really close to the Death Star, like overly close, and they were really far away from the enemy capital ships, the Rebellion's capital ships. The Star Destroyers didn't really engage the Mon Calamari cruisers and the Nebulon B frigates. They more engaged the fighters, which was not a smart idea at all. So both of these battles, you could say that the Empire was just too cocky. They thought they could have won, but there were some really smart generals and admirals at both of those battles. Those people should have known that this was a dumb idea, and they should have thrown everything they could at the rebellion. So why was the rebellion able to win both of these battles when the Empire had all the advantages? Yes, like I said, cockiness is definitely a part of this, and Luke having the ability to use the Force was also a part of it. But I was reading this Legends book, and by the way, this Legends book, there are Legends books that are really well written and tell a good story. There are Legends books that are poorly written but tell a solid story. And there are Legends books that are written really, really well but tell a terrible story. In my opinion, this Legends book tells both a terrible story and is pretty poorly written. But it does have some interesting information in it. So this Legends book is actually a collection of 6 books. And the one that I I'm looking at currently is The Lost City of the Jedi book by Paul Davids and Hollis Davids. So this book introduces an idea of an organization called the Dark Side Prophets. Now, the Dark Side Prophets live in this place called the Null Zone, which is just an area in, I can't really tell exactly what it is, but it's an area somewhere in space that is surrounded by gamma radiation. So if you've ever seen the Clone Wars episode, Altar of Mortis, that I feel like it's kind of like that area that they're in, kind of like a mysterious area filled with the Force. And in the Null Zone, there's this space station called Space Station Scardia. And on this space station, there were the prophets of the dark side. There were, in this prophets of the dark side, I'm pretty sure that there were 6 prophets. There were prophets such as High Prophet Jedgar, who I'm pretty sure, it seems like he is the scribe of the group. And then there's the leader of the prophets, who is a little dwarf named Kadan. I think I'm saying that right, Kadann. So Kadan is the highest of the prophets. He's kind of like the leader of the prophets of the dark side. And what these prophets of the dark side do, especially Kadan, is they predict the future for the Empire. They notably actually predicted the death of the Emperor. They predicted the exact date and time that both Death Stars would blow up. And, they predicted a whole lot of other very significant events. And these prophets have lots of power within the Empire. In this book, the person that wants to become the new emperor of the Empire has to go to these prophets to be acclaimed to the title of emperor so that other people will actually recognize him. So these high prophets have lots and lots of power within the Empire. And one would think that with all that power, they have to be legit, right? I mean, they probably have been experiencing dreams from the Force, and they probably meditate all day long until they get a glimpse of the future, and they put the puzzle pieces together, and then they warn everybody about the things that they glimpsed in these cryptic riddles. However, that's not really the case. Let me read you an excerpt of this from chapter 4 called The Dark Blessing. But Kadan's prophecies didn't always come from dreams. The inspiration for Kadan's prophecies more often came from his secret network of very ruthless and efficient spies. They dutifully brought him secret information. This outpost was, for all intents and purposes, the Imperial Bureau of Investigation. So essentially what that paragraph said is that Kadan sometimes, or the Kadan and some of the prophets, they sometimes got visions from dreams, and the dark side may have told them stuff, but generally they got information from spies and from a vast network of spies that would tell them things. And so they're not really that legit. However, I mean, if you hear that, you might be thinking, okay, so maybe they aren't fully legit, but they have a lot of information, more information than most people in the Empire, so they're still kind of valuable, right? They're still telling important information. Let's read the next paragraph. Information from spies helped Kadan figure out what was likely to happen, and if his prophecies didn't come true by themselves, then Kadan and the other prophets of the dark side used their great influence to make them come true, using bribery, sabotage, and treachery, and sometimes even murder. In that way, they kept their power and influence in the Empire. So yes, sometimes he takes the information, he puts it together, and he makes a prediction from it, or he makes a reasonable assumption from it, and that thing actually happens. But more often than not, in order to keep his power, which is a big problem with the Empire, is people just wanting to keep power, prioritizing power over everything else. But Kadon, in an effort to keep his power, will do anything, treachery, bribery, murder, he'll do whatever he wants to keep that power and make people still believe in him. So what does this have to do with the Death Star? Well, we know that the Death Star that the exact time and date of both the Death Stars being blown up was predicted by Kadon. And as we know, Kadon will do anything to keep his predictions accurate. So if he predicts that the rebels are going to blow up the Death Stars, and then he realizes that the Empire has a significant advantage over the rebellion, what is he going to do? He's not going to sit back, let the Empire destroy the rebellion, and keep their priceless Death Star. No, that would compromise his power and his position. Instead, what Kadon does is he has the power to use bribery, sabotage, treachery, and murder to make that Death Star blow up. So what do I think could have happened? Well, I think that Kadon would use his spies, and he would realize that the rebels are skilled enough that given a fair fight or even a tiny bit of an advantage, they'll be able to blow up the Death Stars, both of them, the one at Endor and the one at Yavin. So he realizes that as long as he gives them a fair fight or a slight advantage, they'll be able to win the Death Star battles. So Kadon, at this point, could use bribery and end up giving, or not only bribery, just his vast influence and money to get the rebels just slightly better equipment and better missiles and stuff, and give that to the rebels very secretly, and then now they have the tools they need to take on these Death Stars. And then what he could do is he could sabotage the Death Star. This is specifically on the Endor Death Star. He could sabotage their project in a way so that the construction workers on the Death Star were never able to close that giant hole in the Death Star. And so that makes it super easy for the rebellion to blow up the Death Star. He could use murder and treachery very, very well. If Kadon is truly a master of the dark side, he could choke people from across the galaxy. He could bring ships down with the power of the Force. Now, it may take some power and concentration, but if he was strong enough, he'd be able to do this. In this way, he might be able to do things such as destroy the Super Star Destroyer Executor. Which one is it? I think it's Executor. He would be able to bring it down. After the A-Wing crashes into it, he could use that to bring down the Super Star Destroyer onto the Death Star, giving the rebels a morale boost. He could use murder and take different officers away. He could murder them, or even just kidnap them, or make them leave the Empire, or whatever way he needs. But he can make some of the top officers leave certain battles so that the rebellion is able to destroy the Death Star. It's a long shot, I know. Why would somebody in the Empire completely undermine the Emperor and destroy one of the most valuable, expensive things in the Empire? I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. But people in the Empire, the majority of them, the stereotypical person in the Empire, craves power above anything else. And so yes, to keep his position, to keep his influence, to keep his power in the Empire, Kadan definitely would sacrifice a Death Star. He would sacrifice all the people aboard it. He would do that just to keep his power. But of course, that's just a theory. There's no proof supporting that. Even in Legends, there is no proof of that. And yeah, this all came from Legends, so it's not even canon anymore. But it's an interesting idea. What if there were some people that predicted things for the Empire, and they predicted the destruction of the Death Star, and so therefore to keep their influence, they would do anything they could to make sure that Death Star blew up, and then everyone would be like, whoa, I can't believe he predicted that. And suddenly you're super influential and people listen to you. I feel like that is actually a very likely thing given what we have seen people in the Empire do. But that's about all I have got for today. Let me know in the comments if you agree with what I think, or if I missed something, or if you have any other ideas. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Star Wars Nerds and Geeks signing off. See you all next time.